I know you're not going to just buy one thing, so buy two. Buy a book and a seminar. Buy a seminar and an information package. Buy one, read it, digest it. You're not going to think you got all the answers because you only have about one. So buy another one, it'll say exactly the same thing as the first one did, and then you should be satisfied that you've got enough information on the phone. But just buy two things. Any combination, I don't care, spend as much as you want on these two things. Pick two things and do them, and you'll be set, okay? Another thing about it that none of the gurus will tell you about is that buying them is easy, managing them is where all the work and profit is. It's the hardest part and most challenging part of the process, by far. I mean, you can buy it in 90 days. You're gonna own it forever. So you think about the time horizon. So this is another thing. If you've got $20,000 burning a hole in your pocket because you've got to buy tools and you've got to buy information products, spend 5 on the buy and spend 15 on the management. Because the management's where you're going to make all your money. That's where the profit is. And guess what? No guru teaches you property management because it's not sexy. It's not sexy. Owning apartments isn't sexy. It is for the first 30 minutes until you start taking phone calls from tenants. And it's only 30 minutes, believe me. That's the real story about getting educated, folks. You don't need to spend a lot of time doing it. Step 7. Remember, we're going to talk about step 1, step 7, and step 8. Step 7 is assess your resources and situation. Guess what? Your spouse has to be on board before you get started. Buying an apartment building is like buying a business, okay? I mentioned this in another talk that I did, but when you buy a single-family house, it's vacant for most of it. I know when I bought mine, I still do the little rocket dance, you go inside, you do the rocket dance inside the house when you close. Yeah, close on the house. Buying an apartment building is like jumping into a moving river. Once you buy it, it's operating, you have people, they're there, you need to start managing it within 30 minutes. I got phone calls within 30 minutes of passing out. I'll tell you about it in a minute, the story, it's funny. So I got phone calls starting immediately when I dropped the flyers off, hey, new sheriff in town. Immediately. So your spouse has to be on board before you get started on this. And don't tell your spouse that it's not going to be any work on their part, because they are going to be taking phone calls. You're going to ask them to go to the bank to deposit checks. You're going to have to transfer funds between accounts. You're going to have to, your spouse is going to be involved in this. Okay. If I see one mistake people make, boy, oh boy, this is it, folks, this is it. Single-family houses, no problem. No problem at all. It's much less stress. You can, manage them. It's very easy. But apartment buildings, it's exponentially more difficult. How much money do you have access to? And by access, I mean, if tomorrow I find a deal in Royal Oak, downtown, it's 100% occupied, with good occupancy history, it's throwing off 10% cash-on-cash return, how much can you write? What kind of check can you write me in the next 7 days? That's what I mean by access to. I don't mean if you go tin cupping to all your relatives and everything like that, and it's going to take 3 months to do that. No, do the tin cupping now and have them lined up. How much money do you have access to in the next 7 days? 7 days. Third, how much time do you have? Remember the one part we talked about, it takes work. How much time do you have? And the fourth thing is, why the hell do you want to buy an apartment building? More people, I ask everybody this question, and this is, people cannot articulate why. It's not sexy buying an apartment building, folks. My story, October 29th, 2008. I bought a house, had $1 million day in my real estate business. I bought a house and an apartment building on the same day. Closed the apartment building at 10 in Rochester Hills, and the closing on the house at 1:30, I think, or 2 in Grosse Pointe, because the house was in Harper Woods. Okay, so closing took forever on the apartment building. I just had a chance to go grab a coffee and lunch, and then went to the closing for the house. Didn't get to go by the apartment building. Closed on the house, changed the locks on the house. My apartment building's in Warren, so I drove to that Warren apartment building. And when the day of closing, you go and you take your flyer that says new sheriff in town, put them under the doors. I live about 30 minutes away from my apartment. I live in Beverly Hills, apartment building's in Warren. Cruised down 696, I stopped at the liquor store. I'm a big Scotch guy. And by the way, I'm gonna hang out. If anyone wants to have a drink, I see Scotch back here, so I'm hanging out and networking afterwards. I stopped to buy a good bottle of Scotch, Macallan 18. Just $160 because I killed an apartment. When I got home, by the time I got home, 30 minutes later, I had 7 voicemails already. 4 from the same tenant, Lisa Lobato. Lisa Marie Lobato.
Remember
4 voicemails from the same tenant. I got 30 minutes of that. This is sexy. I'm cool. I took down an apartment building. And oh my gosh! So instead of drinking the scotch to celebrate my purchase, I'm drinking the scotch to forget about my tenants. And that's just the way it is. So folks, thankfully, it's never gotten so bad I wanted to throw in the towel, because you can't. This is something that, you can't ignore. You can't ignore 20 tenants, 20 units. You can't not pay the water bill. Once you're in this, it's not like a flip where I can do a sprint for 90 days, get in, get out, get cash, go back, cash to cash 90 days. Go away, folks.